Hi everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, night, or evening, or wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is, whatever it may be. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today, as you guys can see from the title of today's video, I have another book video for you guys. The long awaited, every book I've given 5 stars to. I've gotten so many requests to do this video and just share all the books that I've given 5 stars to, and now that I feel that I have a good collection to share with you guys so far, I am going to show you all of them and talk a little bit about each of them. The first book I want to talk about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by Victoria Schwab. You guys know, if you have been longtime subscribers for like, the past year and a half maybe, you guys will know that I did a reading vlog to this book and I absolutely bawled my eyes out. But yeah, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, obviously I gave this one 5 stars. It is such an amazing book. It's about this woman, her name is Addie LaRue, and it basically has 2 different timeline periods, present day and past day. She was born in the 1700s in, I believe it was France, I believe. She is in the time period where she is being forced off to marry, an arranged marriage, stuff like that, you know. But she has dreams to see the world. She didn't want to get married to this guy, and in their town around this time, they had this old little like folklore kind of like scary story about not to pray to the gods after dark, because I guess praying to those gods after dark were like bringing on some pretty bad shit in your life. So basically she ran off from her wedding, prayed to the darkness is what they call it in this book, and her whole entire life gets flipped upside down. She is pretty much immortal. She does not die, but the twist of it all is that even though she cannot die and she's immortal, she can still feel suffrage. And one of the worst parts of this curse that she has to endure is nobody remembers her. So for example, they have a scene in this book where every time she meets someone new, they'll remember her until they leave the room, and when they come back in the room, they're like, they don't remember her. So that is the unfortunate truth of her curse, until one day she obviously meets someone and he remembers her. It is a pretty big book. I also have heard this book is kind of difficult to get into, and a lot of people have had reading slumps with this book. I will say the first 150 pages of this book are kind of quote-unquote slow, but once you finish the book, you'll understand why all the information was so important. In a way, like a coming-of-age kind of book. It shows you everything that she had to endure with her curse, being immortal and living up all these years and being forgotten. It shows the pain and the suffrage, and though that can be boring to read about because it's a lot of background information, I personally believe that it is important background information, and by the time you finish the book, you kind of understand why it was so important. So yes, I definitely recommend this one. Please go read it. It's one of my favorite books of all time, probably. Also, sorry if the lighting in this video keeps changing. I am filming at 6:30 right now and it is extremely windy, so the clouds are the trees and you get the point. Anyways, the next book I want to talk about is Verity by Colleen Hoover. You guys know I love this book. I never shut up about this book, and I won't shut up about this book, to be quite honest. This book is amazing, and I believe everybody should read it at least once in their life when they can maturely handle it, which means mature content, mature age to read it, mature mindset. Obviously, Colleen Hoover, she's a well-known author. She is amazing. She writes wonderful romance books, but she also writes some pretty amazing but fucked up romance books. And this is kind of one of them. It is a murder mystery with a twist or romance to it. The Verity character, Verity, is a well-known author in this book. However, she has an accident and she pretty much is in a coma and cannot write her books anymore. So she hires Lowen Ashley, who is a struggling writer financially. She pretty much hires her onto her team to finish the books that she's writing. So Lowen basically moves in to Verity's house with Verity's husband and her child. As Lowen is writing out her time at the Crawford home, she is going through all of Verity's writing material and she stumbles across Verity's manuscript. This manuscript, first of all, hashtag team manuscript, period. But the manuscript is so fucked up. It's a mess. It's a mess, but it's a masterpiece, and I highly, highly recommend reading it. I also listened to the audiobook while I read along with this too. Okay, so the next 3 books that I'm going to recommend are kind of all in a series. The first book that I want to recommend to you guys is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I feel like everybody knows a little bit about The Deal. Even if you haven't read it, you've definitely heard about it, and if you haven't, then let me tell you a little bit about it. It is a book that is set in college time, where it is a hockey romance. The whole series, it's called the Off-Campus series and the LaRue series. There's 4 books in each series, so 8 books total. Each book follows along a different couple. All the books are kind of like interwoven into each other because the characters overlap and appear in other books as well. So it's a series, but you don't technically have to read them in order because they're different plot lines with different characters, but there are obviously character overlaps in the books. So what I'm talking about is the first book in the Off-Campus series called The Deal. The 2 characters' names are Hannah and Garrett, and basically she is assigned to tutor him. Not assigned, but like begs her pretty much just to tutor him because he's failing a class. Long story short, they fall in love. That's the whole premise of it. But obviously there's more in between. I can't tell you that because it's gonna ruin the book, but it is such an amazing book. The characters of this book are just so cute. The romance itself is really, really cute. I highly recommend it. The next book within that series is the 4th book in the Off-Campus series, which is called The Goal. The 2 characters in this book is Sabrina James and John Tucker, I think his name is. This book does have a pregnancy trope in it. Fair warning, I know there are some people who are incredibly turned off by the whole pregnancy trope, which I understand. I get it. I personally don't want a kid in real life, but there's something about a pregnancy trope, like reading it, which is so cute. I don't know why. Some authors can just do a really good job with the pregnancy trope. I ended up really liking it. As you can see, I tabbed the absolute shit out of this book, and I thought it was so cute. Basically, the whole premise of this story is they are pretty much just hookup buddies, and she accidentally gets pregnant. Tucker just has my heart. The next book I want to talk about is the 2nd book in the Briar-U series, and it is called The Risk. This book's characters are Jake Connolly, who is on a rival team of Briar-U, which is the university that the Off-Campus series all the boys go to. Brenna, which is the Briar-U's hockey coach's daughter. That is already, like, I don't know. For me, I love stories that are like that. It's like an enemies to lovers kind of deal. Kind of like a we shouldn't be together, but I like you. It does have fake dating in it. Also, Jake Connolly would probably be one of my favorite Off-Campus Briar-U boys. The next book I want to recommend to you guys is the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. If you guys are longtime viewers, sorry, I'm like changing the camera angle. If you guys are longtime viewers, you guys will know that I read the first book in the series last summer, and then I recently read the 2nd book in the series. I have not finished the series yet, but I do plan on it this summer. I do plan on finishing it this summer, and I will vlog it. I promise you guys. Pinky promise. I don't break pinky promises. I have not finished the series, but I'm already going to tell you guys to go read the whole entire series because it's amazing. I've read the first 2 books, and I am absolutely intrigued. I am in love. Even though I didn't give the 2nd book 5 stars, I would give the overall series 5 stars, and I'm just going to put that out now just because I know that last book is going to be freaking amazing. The way in which Holly Jackson writes this book and goes about just setting up the whole entire book in general, and the audiobook, I highly recommend listening to the audiobook because it is phenomenal. The way in which it is set up is so clever. I've never seen it in another book before. There are text messages, there's like journal entries and stuff like that, interview stuff and stuff like that. The 2nd book is even more insane because Pip has like a whole podcast, so it's formulated in a podcast on paper almost, like, if that makes sense. If you guys don't know the Girl's Guide to Murder series, let me explain it a little bit. Our main character, Pip, who is a senior, basically has this senior capstone project. So she decided to do her senior capstone project on a local murder within her town. It was a pretty and popular senior, Addie Bell, who was murdered by her boyfriend, or supposedly who we think, Sal Singh, and who then killed himself after being accused of killing her. However, along her way with researching and investigating this murder, she figures out that Sal Singh is not responsible for Addie Bell's murder, and she is now on the mission to find the actual killer and who murdered Sal as well. I highly recommend this book. It is so amazing. Please go read it. It's just amazing. so good. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is called Love in Other Words by Laura and Christina. You guys have heard me talk about this in a recent video, so I won't bore you guys to death with the details about this one. Just know that you need to go read it. It is a childhood friends to lovers romance. It is so cute. It does have a little bit of spice in it. Okay, the next book I have to share with you guys is called The Killer Across the Table: Unlocking the Secrets of Serial Killers and Predators with the FBI's Original Mindhunter by John Douglas and Mark I'm totally gonna fuck up that last name, so I'm not even gonna say it. But this book was okay, it was fucked up, but I gave it 5 stars because, as you guys know, or as most of you guys know, I am a criminal justice major at my college, so reading books like this is very interesting to me, and being able to see the psychology kind of aspect, the criminology aspect side of criminal justice is very intriguing to me because it's what I want to do. This was an amazing book on that kind of aspect, on a real note, on humanity level note. Hearing all of these killers and obviously the details of their killings on these innocent victims is so messed up and so hard to read about and so hard to stomach. There were multiple times when I had to stop reading this book because the details of the murders were so gruesome or so hard to swallow. However, the psychology, criminology aspect of it was incredibly intriguing, which is what kept me reading it and is mainly why I gave it 5 stars. Basically, if you guys have seen the show Mindhunters on Netflix, it is those 2 people. They pretty much got to go around and interview a bunch of serial killers. They got to interview Charles Manson, the Sam of Sun killer, which is David Berkowitz, BTK Strangler, Dennis Rader, as well as other killers throughout this book, but those are kind of like the main that they talk about. It is so fascinating to read about their careers, everything that was happening during this time period, basically how their research and their work helps analyze these people today and understand why they do what they do. For my true crime girlies, if you can stomach this shit, highly recommend it. The next book I want to talk about is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is another romance book. It kind of follows along the same theme as the Off-Campus Burr You series. Calloway sisters, Lily, Rose, Daisy. There's also one more sister, I can't remember her name. Each book follows along a different sister's relationship. The first 3 books do follow along in Lily and Lauren Hale's romance. So Addicted to You, Ricochet, and Addicted for Now are all Lily's romance story with Lauren. And then Kiss the Sky is Rose and Connor's love story, and then Hot House Flower is Daisy and Wright, I think. So the whole premise of this story is they are both in deep love with each other, but they're best friends. They also both have pretty serious addictions that they're dealing with. Lily struggles with a sex addiction, and Lauren Hale is basically an alcoholic, so he struggles with an alcohol addiction. Sort of fake dating for a little bit. It also is a best friends to lovers story, a childhood friends to lovers story. Okay, so the next couple of books that I want to recommend to you guys, I don't actually physically have with me because 2 of them are being loaned out to friends, and the other 2 I left up at my apartment, so I don't have them with me, unfortunately. But the book that I want to next talk to you guys about is the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom duology. First and foremost, Six of Crows alone by itself is such an amazing book. Even if Leigh Bardugo stopped after Six of Crows, phenomenal. But she obviously continued with Crooked Kingdom, which was also phenomenal, which very rarely do I find a book that the first and second book equally as good. One of my favorite characters is Kaz. There's just something about his morally gray character that has, like, each chapter you kind of get a little inch by inch of learning why he is the way he is, and just like all the characters in general. Each chapter you get to know a little more about them, a little more about their trauma, a little more about their past, and you just The way in which Leigh Bardugo writes these books, you just fall in love with these characters. A lot of people do recommend though that if you want to read the Six of Crows duology, to read the Shadow and Bone series beforehand, because the plot building, like the world building, makes a little more sense when you've read the Shadow and Bone series, whereas when you read the Six of Crows series, it kind of just like jumps you in right away. There's not a ton of world building like at all, so which is not bad. It's not a bad thing. I recommend it. I have read the Shadow and Bone series. I thought it was pretty good. The next book that I want to talk about is a very mature book, so definitely 18 plus people read this one. Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. Even though the characters are set in high school, there are some pretty mature scenes, and by mature scenes I mean sex scenes. There are obviously very vulgar sex scenes. It is two best friends who are basically like pen pals, and they've never met in person, they've never seen what they look like, anything like that. They live in two different towns, but one of them eventually stops writing to the other and pretty much moves to the other's town and gets to know the person who they've been pen pal writing, and it turns out they aren't anything what they seemed to be. So this person is kind of like a bully romance in a way, enemies to lovers kind of book where they like hate each other. She doesn't know that that is the pen pal that she's been like writing to until pretty much he gets caught, and it's like this whole ordeal, and it's a really good book. I really recommend it for my more mature girlies, boys, and non-binaries. The last book that I want to talk about is called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book, this one pulled my heartstrings. It is definitely on the more serious type of book. It talks about very sensitive topics like suicide and stuff like that, but it is such an amazing book overall. It is basically about this woman who basically committed suicide, but she got stuck in this like in-between type phase where she wasn't alive but she wasn't dead. In a way, a place of purgatory. It was this place called the Midnight Library. It had a bunch of books on the shelves, and each book had a different life that she could have lived. And there's also this thing called Book of Regrets, which shows all of her regret. You kind of have to read it to understand how I feel talking about this book, just because it is one of those books that makes you inwardly look at life and kind of changes your perspective in a way, but it's amazing. I recommend it. Anyways, those are all the books that I've given 5 stars to lately. Obviously, these are not all the books that I'm going to give 5 stars to. I will update this when I have more books under my belt. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below your 5-star reads. And if you guys aren't already subscribed, be sure to subscribe down below. But other than that, I will see you guys. Bye, guys.
I used to take myself out on dates, open my own damn doors, pay for everything on my plate. Sometimes I'd even get the steak, cause I got it like that. Always had my own bag, never needed no man to rely on. Got 2 good shoulders to cry.